Hello, you're listening to Food Rebels, and I'm your host, AJ Sharp. As you know, this is the show dedicated to the more rebellious side of the food world. We celebrate the people who have challenged status quo. These guys are food founders, challenger brands. But this one's really exciting because we're talking about smoked foods, which is literally one of my favourite subjects. I'm talking about curing, and I'm in a studio full of smoked food royalty. So firstly, welcome back to our guest presenter, Dhruv Baker, who we met last week. He's wearing two hats today, both guest presenter and an expert, as the owner of Tempest Foods. And he's brought some of his own smoked charcuterie in for us this week. And we've also got the Smokin Brothers, Vincenzo Gentile and Jacopo Fincato. So welcome to you guys too.
Hello.
Thanks. So Dhruv, tell me a little bit about your relationship with smoked foods and where this came from.
Yeah, so within Tempest, within our range of cured meats, we have two smoked products. So smoking is a fundamental part of the process. Yeah, I'm fascinated today because I've got two hats on, so I'm doing two things at once, which my wife would argue is not going to be possible. But, to see what these guys are doing, they do a phenomenal smoked salmon. And actually, there are similarities with both products. So for me, from a producer, I'm always fascinated to talk to other guys in our field. But as presenter, I get to ask lots of questions. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I'm kind of doubly engaged in this episode because we've got a product I adore just as a consumer, but I'm also fascinated from the process perspective.
Yeah, me too. Smoked salmon is one of my real favourite foods. I'm so excited about this. Vincenzo, can you tell me a little bit about Smokin Brothers? How did you set it up? Where did the idea come from?
Well, Smokin Brothers is an artisan smoked salmon brand based in the Cotswolds, specifically in the Dalesford Organic Farm. And what we try to do is that we take the most sustainable fish from Scotland, and then we cure it, we smoke it, and we package it in sustainable packaging.
Fantastic. And Jacopo, what's your role in the company?
Let's say I take more the creative side of the business. That is kind of weird for a smoked salmon business to have someone inside thinking about all the creative aspect. It's a very nice take, give us the opportunity to explore the communication of our product in very different ways. Yeah, challenging, but still very, very fun.
It's really cool. How did you even get into smoked salmon? Do you live by a river?
It's a cool
you chefs?
It's a very London story, I'd say.
I think it's very weird. I mean, in our background, we never really had much to do on smoked salmon. Obviously, we're Italians. I mean, smoked salmon is not really an Italian thing. You would think that Italians always make pizza or pasta, these classic things. But no, when we got to London, specifically myself and my business partner, Alessandro, who's not here today, we were just really going with the flow. We were very young. We were 18, 19, and we were living in this warehouse in Hackney. And we met this very crazy Norwegian guy. He was living just literally a few doors away from where we were living. And he had a business, a smoked salmon business. And it was getting closer to Christmas. So you can imagine Christmas is the big time for smoked salmon. And this guy was just like, look, I need some help. Can you guys come and help us? And we were just interested by this guy. And we thought, sure, why not? Let's give it a shot. And we actually see a whole world in this smoked salmon. Particularly for myself, I came in the UK with no plans. I didn't know what to do with my life. And for the first time, I found something that was getting closer to my passion. I found something that was very interesting and something I wanted to dive in 100%. And one thing after the other, basically I learned a lot about smoked salmon and I studied a lot about smoked salmon. And then after a couple of years, the business I was working with was not in the market anymore. And I was working with Dalesford Organic and they needed someone in the smoked salmon business. And I was really keen to start a business by myself. I thought, why not? Let's send the business plan to the CEO of Dalesford. And that was it. That was the beginning. At the beginning, obviously, I was barely 22 when I sent the business plan. But I had experience in Dalesford, and the people in Dalesford, the management, were very happy with me. I had a wonderful relationship with them. I was very hardworking. And so the CEO asked for reference, and they said, he's a very nice guy, give it a shot. And he said, okay, fine, I have a place. It's not working. Get it up and running. Okay, make some smoked salmon. We'll do a tasting. If we're happy, we'll give you a job. And I did that. So I was living in the office for like a couple of months.
Yeah, so by a place, do you mean like a smoking hut?
Yeah, it was literally, imagine like a warehouse with a smokehouse.
Wow.
And a tiny office. That was it.
I can imagine the aroma of this place.
Yeah, I was eating smoked salmon breakfast, lunch and dinner.
And you're sleeping in this place as well?
Yeah, there was like a couch there. They had the tasting, they loved it, and so they sent me a proposal plan to work for them. But actually, I didn't want to work for them, so I sent a counter offer, and I said, I'm gonna produce Dalesford smoked salmon branded, but I want to be independent. So Dalesford has nothing to do with the business. I'll pay the bills, I'll pay the rent, but the warehouse is ours and we do whatever we want. And they said, okay, you can have it.
Cool.
And so we were the first and only independent business inside the Dalesford farm, and we still are.
That's incredible.
Right.
And why the Smokin Brothers? Are you two actually brothers?
Not really. I mean, we're almost brothers in the sense that we've been living together for many years. We love each other. We're best friends. And we always had a really, really strong bond. So obviously, when you're starting a business, the first people you encounter is your best friends.
Yeah.
And I knew Alessandro and Jacopo. They were people I could trust. They were people with incredible skills. But really, Smokin Brothers is all coming from this brilliant mind next to me, Jacopo. He's the one who designed all the packaging. He created the brand, and he helped us put together a story that could be appealing. And so he's probably the best person to describe why Smokin Brothers and how we came to this point.
It was actually the first thing Dhruv and I were admiring, wasn't it, this packaging?
The packaging is gorgeous, and as soon as I picked it up, it's very tactile. It's got this kind of lovely embossed detail, which is it's kind of mimics the sort of scale.
Yeah,
you can't help but pick it up and stroke it. And there is, it looked like gills. There's sort of little cuts so that actually, from a functional perspective, you can see the product, which is within the packaging. So it's just beautifully simple, but very kind of delicate, which I think really reflects what smoked salmon is. On paper, smoked salmon is very simple, but actually the simpler things are the hardest to make because you've got smoke, salt, and thyme, right? And whatever
it's complex
you're using.
simplicity, probably.
Absolutely, there you go. And I think the packaging speaks to that process immediately. There is a beauty in the simplicity, but generally speaking, I find that the simpler a process, the harder it is to get right. As an example, I'll say that I think one of the hardest pasta dishes to make properly would be something like a carbonara.
100%.
You've got very few ingredients, but it's all about minutiae of detail to
Oh,
get
yeah.
that right. I think I've only just got it right. I don't believe I'm saying it in front of these two, but it's probably taken me 20 years.
I made one last night that everyone complained about because it was too dry. I hadn't put enough egg in. I'd got it wrong.
But when there's fewer components, you can't hide it. Like with smoked salmon, there's nowhere to hide. It's the level of the smoke, the level of the saltiness, the quality of the fish. You can't make good smoked salmon from a bad starting point in terms of the raw ingredients.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is all about the quality of the fish, isn't it?
Yeah, the ingredients are important. And I think this is the Italian approach we have in our business. The fact that we don't want to overcomplicate things. We want very simple, few ingredients with the highest quality and a very precise recipe to make it. Like you just mentioned the carbonara, very few ingredients, but the process, it's everything. Also, so you got to make sure you got ingredients and then the process is very clear.
I'd say more than the process, the timing.
Yes, I agree. The timing, exactly. So, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit? Can we taste it?
Of
And you
course,
tell us a
please.
little bit about what you've done to make this so incredible. Which should we start
So
with?
we've got two products here. So if you guys just tell us, so we've got two smoked salmon products in front of us. What are the two we've got?
So we have the classic smoked salmon, which is just a traditional way of doing it, which is natural salt, cured, and then smoked over juniper, beech, and oak. Again, the process here we make, it's very original. So what we do is that, first of all, we receive the fish from Scotland straight away after the fishing date. We do a filleting by hand. We cure it in salt. But what we do, we literally massage the fish with the salt. So what happens? The salt penetrates in a completely different way. So when you just put the salt on top of it, the absorption of the flesh, it's much longer. So you end up in a much salty fish. But when you do literally a massage onto the fish, the salt penetrates in a completely different way into the flesh. And so we only keep it for 10 hours. That's long enough for the moisture to be released, the bacteria to leave the fish, and then we wash it off the salt. We hang it into the smoking chamber by the neck, so it's hanging and it's releasing all the extra moisture during the process, just with wind for a couple of hours, so the whole flesh dries out. And then we put the smoke in. That would be between 16 and 18 hours. And what is very important is there is a very strong circulation where we have at the beginning of the smoking chamber a grill through where all the smoke is coming through, and then we have an extraction on the back. So there is a constant new injection of smoke and a constant extraction. Obviously, the amount of wood we burn, it's so much more than majority of our competitors. But what we realize is when you put a lot of smoke into a chamber and you close it down, after a few hours, it becomes really heavy, almost like a BBQ kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have an incredible salmon quality, you don't want to over smoke it. You don't want to cover the naturality of the flavor. The fish, the salmon needs to be the subject, and the smoke and the salt is just an addition on the preparation to add texture and flavor. So by having this constant extraction, what happens, the smoke, it's always very gentle and light onto the flesh. It never becomes too heavy. And also what we do, we keep the ribs of the fish on. So it's not entirely smoked. You'll have the belly, which is the most fatty and delicate part, covered And so the curing is not even, but this not being even, this imperfection actually makes it very delicate and very unique, because you'll have a smoky fillet and a very delicate belly and really, really buttery.
It's seriously creamy. And it's,
Yeah.
you know, one of the first things you notice is that you don't have big, fat, white lines through the fish, which, you know, we've always been taught is not really a good thing, is it? It's minutely fine, almost imperceptible. Which
it has to be. I mean, the big lines of fat, it's equivalent of the fish not swimming enough, which means
farmed.
It's been farmed heavily. It took us a couple of years to find the right farm before we could actually understand really how the fish should be treated. Because the reality of things is that 95, I would say even more than that, salmon on the market, it's disgusting. There is a amount of antibiotics. The animal is not swimming enough. And so for us, it was very important as a new generation of entrepreneur to have a product we're proud about. And the sustainability side, it was fundamental, key. And so we found this incredible farm where they basically have this wonderful fish, and with a very high wave, there's a lot of currents, and the wave are really, really strong. And so they have to swim constantly. They're always swimming, and the amount of fat they create in their body is so little. I really can challenge you to find another salmon that's that lean, unless it's a wild salmon.
Oh, it's incredible. I had a friend, Duncan, who one summer worked in a fish farm, and I went to visit, and I just remember seeing this fish farm and just being horrified.
Yeah.
The amount of fish in such a small area, and watching them being fed and things, it just didn't feel right. So sounds like this is the opposite end of that spectrum.
Yeah, I think I would always say that fish should be eaten with much care. So what I would always suggest is eat less fish, but when you do, make sure you buy the right one.
Eat less, eat better.
Exactly.
I think for me, smoked salmon isn't all about balance. It's a given that the quality of the fish is in no doubt whatsoever, but the balance between salt and smoke and that inherent and natural sweetness is absolutely perfect. Yeah. It's very rare, especially when you're using a robust smoke like oak, which can be quite aggressive. I know you've sort of softened it with beech a little bit, and then you've got the juniper, but oak can become such a bully, but you've got that hint of it. But if it was straight oak, it would completely overpower. But I love that the nuance that's there. You've got that oak, a hint of oak, but it doesn't go all the way through. And I love the fact that the ribs are kept on. You're protecting what's quite a delicate part of the fish. Obviously, the smoke clings to the fat molecules. The belly being the fattiest part would become unpalatably smoky. So, but that's really understanding the physiology of the fish and understanding the process from start to finish. And that's what you were saying earlier. Apparently simple the process, the trickier it is. But it's down to knowing the difference between leaving the ribs on or not. And as a consumer, you often don't think to that level, but you don't have to, because these guys do.
Yeah, the idea behind is always like to try to highlight the natural ingredient, the salmon in itself. Usually when a salmon is over smoked, it's simply because there is a need to cover maybe the lack of quality of the raw ingredient, but we definitely want to highlight it with our process. So that's what we try to do with every production, like, you know, not covering the proper qualities of this amazing salmon.
I think it's accepted that over smoking is often done to hide something.
Yeah, 100%.
Whether it's smoke, whether it's pork, salmon, whether it's pork, over smoked products is generally there to hide something.
Yeah.
What's really fascinating is I can remember judging for Great Taste at one point and having this piece of salmon, and us talking about how the belly was incredible and that was award-winning, but the bit further up wasn't, and they had an inconsistency in the quality of flavour you were getting across the fish. And it sounds like by keeping the ribs on, you're actually working to protect that and keep the consistency throughout the whole slice.
Yeah. The thing is that, for example, in pork and so many other animals, we're used to section them in so many different sections. And in the salmon, you just get smoked salmon or salmon. That's it. Like, you don't have tail, belly, loin. It's just smoked salmon, and we are so used to see in supermarket just plastic vacuum packs of salmon, and that's it. And so one of the things that Jacob has been working on is to actually differentiate the belly and the tail. So in all our packaging, we offer 2 options to our clients where they can get to try whether they want a very high protein lean meat coming from the tail, because obviously the tail is what allows the fish to swim. So it's very muscly and very lean. And the belly, obviously, being a little bit fattier, rich in omega-3. When you put them together, they're completely different. So when you taste the belly of a fish, or when you taste the loin, or you taste the tail, they're almost completely different products, but they all come from the same fish. We are in charge, I think, as a new entrepreneur, to make sure every piece of animal is used and there is no wastage. And for example, in our industry, the tail is often discarded or sold as not interesting. You know, I don't like that. That's extra. But no, the tail is amazing. I personally love the tail much more than any other part of the salmon. And so by using every single piece of the salmon and explaining to the client, this is not a discard product. This is an amazing product.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just different. what we offer is that we sell it as the same price. So people, they don't judge based on the price, but
Sure.
they go, this is belly tail, same price. Let me try which one I like. And we always suggest to our clients, when you're first buying from us, buy one belly, one tail. So you get to try the difference, and then you can choose with the one you like.
It's fantastic.
But this is actually a move, and this kind of idea of fish butchery, which,
Yeah.
Josh Nant has kind of really championed in Australia.
Yes.
But this idea of using the whole animal
Yeah.
is integral, and I think there is so much wastage across the board within animal protein.
Yeah.
Within fish, it's criminal. I mean, it's criminal across whatever sector, but
Yeah.
we buy fish. You don't go to the supermarket and buy meat. You want to know the cut of it, and actually by what Josh did and what you guys are doing, which is really highlighting the fundamentally different elements and intrinsic qualities for each different cut. People start thinking differently. Historically,
Yeah.
you'd cut the head off and chuck it out.
Yeah.
You'd fillet it, the tail and the bones would go in the bin, and then you'd end up with 2 fillets, and you wouldn't distinguish between.
But
the
you're
tail
right.
and
It's
the
just
rest.
salmon, isn't it? But you don't go and order just beef.
Yeah.
No, but if you look in Japan, you'll be sold a toro, which is separately, and so there is this deeper understanding, and I think we're coming towards it, and that's why. For someone like here on the show, the Food Rebels, you guys are disruptors in that space, because you're saying actually we need to ask more questions of our supply chain than just saying it's salmon. You go, okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
I get what you smoked it with, I get what you've cured it with, but what cut am I using, and why are you doing that to this cut? And I think it's that intrinsic understanding of how each part behaves, which the ultimate winner is the food chain, which it should be, but the customer, because they get something that's a more informed product. And so I get very excited from a customer perspective, but then as a producer, I can want to geek out on this all day, because we're going into that real minutiae about what makes it as excellent as it is.
Oh, it's amazing. I just want to talk a little bit about the whiskey before we move on to Tempus. The whiskey and soy sashimi style.
All our products are sliced in sashimi style.
Yeah.
And it's basically a vertical section, and we want to proceed with this because
I
it's just
just-
a way more interesting.
It's unreal.
The texture, the bite, the aroma that's coming from it, the salt level. There's almost like a peatiness, isn't there, within the smoke. I don't know if you used a peaty whiskey, but there's so much going on. It's so complex. There's so many different
Yeah, you
flavors.
got the first layer, so it's where you see the glaze, is where this is actually the glazing, so all the flavors from this whiskey and soy sauce. But then the bottom, because we keep the skin on during the smoking process, again, create this kind of protection from smoke. So you keep the real flavor of the salmon. So then they merge all together to create this really smooth, almost nutty.
There is
Yes.
a nuttiness. There is this amazing savouriness, but also there's that gradation or gradation from where the cure's been when it's been exposed to the soy. If you had no skin on it, it would be all the way around,
Yeah.
and you'd actually see it all the way around, and actually would overpower. But
It's
that's
just
exceptional.
creamy
It's
and
given me goosebumps.
yeah, it's absolutely exquisite and incredible.
And this recipe was made by our dear friend Gaetano Farucci. So he has been a great friend from the very beginning of this business. He was head chef at Le Gavroche for over 8 years, and that's where we met. And he made this recipe for the restaurants one day as a special, and he saw people went crazy. They loved it. And so we thought, why don't we just do it every year? We just smoke it instead of curing it, just cure it and serve it on the plate. We also smoke it, and then we put it as a collaboration together. And so where the recipe comes from, it was actually originated in the kitchen of Le Gavroche, and since then
That's
it's
the
been
coolest.
phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely the coolest. Can we talk a little bit about Tempus? Can you tell
Yeah,
us
yeah.
about Tempus and what you've brought in here to the studio?
Yeah, so I've brought in, I knew we were speaking to the guys from Smokin Brothers, so I brought one of our smoke products, which is our smoked copper. We make about 8 or 9 products, but I just wanted to focus on the smoke because that's an intrinsic part of both processes. And actually, I was smiling at the start because our approach to our raw ingredient selection is very similar to yours. It's all about the highest welfare possible. So we only use ex-breeding sows for all of our pork products. We only use ex-dairy for our beef products, but there is a point to it. A breeding sow will be kept with is an older animal.
What would have happened to a breeding sow?
So we as a nation export about 98% of our sows to
Wow.
the continent, where they are processed and then sent back. So we are a net 60% net importer of
That's
pork
crazy.
products.
Completely crazy.
It's madness, right? So even just from the carbon footprint of the food miles alone, there's a saving.
It's insanity.
The animals we were originally using, we started off wanting to be a single breed producer because it seemed like the right thing to do. But actually, very quickly, I realized that that was actually wildly irresponsible to put all of that pressure on one breed. And actually, breeding more animals is not the answer. Using the animals already in existence and using all of that animal is the answer, right, to the various issues we're facing. So we started talking to farmers who have farms where sows will give farrows or litters of piglets. And these animals are generally 180 kilos, which means they're fattier, they're outdoor reared, so we exclusively use outdoor reared animals. They've been around that longer, there's much more muscle tone, there's much more flavour, but also from an ethical perspective, I'd be much I am much happier using animals at the end of their lives and not at the start.
Yeah.
So for all of those reasons, for the ethical reasons, for the welfare of the animal, it makes sense. But from a quality perspective, an older animal will always be better in the context of meat. And I will argue that...
And more flavorful.
And more flavorful. So, I mean, if you guys try it or have a taste of it. So we smoke over a mixture of chestnut and beech, but predominantly chestnut. So there's another similarity there. Cured just with salt. So again, you've got salt and you've got smoke and you've got time. Hence tempus, Latin for time, because it is all about time. Everyone else is trying to make things as quickly as possible at the expense of the end product. And we're saying is actually, if we slowed every process down from the age of the animal to the time of amount of curing to air drying, I think you end up with a better product.
Yeah, you can tell from the texture.
Yeah,
you can tell it's not the rushed product. There's a lot of care.
The flavour, there's so many flavours coming through. The bite is beautiful, but it pulls apart, but it's still got that integrity to it. My mouth is actually watering with
Completely.
thyme and black pepper, and I'm literally sort of trying to resist grabbing
Don't
another
resist,
slice.
go for it, just give into it.
Absolutely
I see
beautiful.
some similarities in the way that there's a kind of a contrast between when you smell it and when you taste it. When you smell it, you can clearly feel like the smokiness, but then when you taste it, it's super delicate, super smooth, and you feel...
It's
Well,
perfect, isn't it?
it's
The
marble.
fat is perfectly white, as it should be.
But I love in the way that you guys approach your smoking. We too, we give ours 3 blocks of 8 hours. So it's 8 hours back in the fridge. If we'd given it 24 straight, it would have been much more concentrated on the outside, and you get this intensity of smoke that would overpower. By actually doing it in a gradual process, we're in essence doing what you're doing, but in a different way, which is to impart smoke throughout it, but not so that you get this shock of smoke and then it dissipates. But we want something that's more evenly throughout.
And I love that it's not over salted, because what I noticed, the majority of meats and pork products in general, once they're cured, they just put a huge amount of salt, and that covers it all.
I wanted to ask you something. I've noticed that with yours as well. The level of salting is perfect. Do you guys use equilibrium curing? So we use a process called equilibrium curing, where each piece of meat is weighed, and then it's a ratio of that piece of meat of salt.
wow.
So historically what you do is you'd put 30 coppers on a table, you'd shovel salt on, you'd sort of rub them on the table, and then off they'd go. Now, if you've got 6 years of experience, 6 generations of experience, I should say, if you're from Italy, you understand that. Now, 5, 10, 15% variance is a huge variance. So it's labor intensive. So each bit is weighed, each bit has its cure and salt made up. So that way you guarantee that level of curing throughout.
I say in salmon, it's more about, again, the importance of timing in the process. It's more about timing than quantities, probably.
Than the
Of course,
amount of
quantity needs to be controlled.
Because you're then washing it off, I suspect.
Yeah.
So with us, it's what's on, and that's
Yeah.
absorbed. So you've got to have that ratio absolutely bang on.
Yeah.
And so once that's absorbed, from the outside, there's
Then
nothing
you
there.
can't
But well, exactly. And if they're 10% more one time to the other, you get inconsistency.
No, yeah, again, as Jacopo said, it's so much more about the timing. You put the salt onto it, and then the fish would naturally absorb on a certain ratio. And once you've done with that timing, you remove whatever is left onto the fish. So the important thing is that the fish is completely covered, so there is no bacteria acting onto the product. And also you want to make sure you control the temperature of where you're doing this process. It needs to be in a certain range, but then the timing is what really makes the difference.
So it is all about time.
Yeah.
It is all about times. How long does what times are we talking about? I've never smoked anything in my life.
So the day it is fished, then it takes about 24 hours to be packed in Scotland. And then the day after it comes to our smokehouse. Then the day after it's filleted in the morning and put it into salt straight away. So in the moment we open the fish and we, let's say, let the bacteria do the job, we cover it straight away in salt. So we stop the process of growth bacteria. Actually, with the salt, obviously being important part of the process of releasing all the bacteria. And it stays 10 hours on salt. Then at night, we do the washing, so we remove all the salt and we put it straight away into the chamber to dry and release all the extra water. At night, it starts the smoking process, which will go on until the day after, which in the late afternoon, we'll go in, start checking them, take a few batch out into fridge to cool down, and we'll leave the ones that we think maybe they need a little bit extra smoking. So we actually check them one by one. They stay overnight in the fridge so that the flesh can rest, because once you have it smoked, it's really hard, it's very firm, and also the salt penetration is not being even yet, it's just mainly on the surface. By staying in the fridge, but it needs to be hanging, not flat. If it's flat, sitting on the door or on a table, it will change completely. So it needs to be hanging in the fridge. Then the salt will penetrate all the way through the flesh, and the flesh will soften up. So the morning after, we can slice it and
That's
pack it.
amazing. Gosh, so labor intensive. And how about you? How long's your process?
So from when the meat comes to us, butchery will be day one. It then goes into cure. That will sit in its cure and its salt for about 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks, but at a very specific temperature range. And we sit on a raised platform with to allow the water to run off. It then gets smoked, and then it gets cased into a natural casing and netted or tied, and then it goes into the aging room, which is a completely different set of climatic, so higher temperature than the curing, but the aging at that point will take probably 4 to 5 months.
Wow.
Earlier, you were saying that once you do all the process, you don't really need to keep the product into the fridge.
No, so
does that come because of the aging? Is that the process that releases all the proteins?
it is twofold. So we have to remember that this product predates refrigeration by hundreds of years, right? So it still surprises me when you see deli owners look at me like I'm mad saying it can't go in the fridge, and the fact that that's been around for a couple of thousand years. So what we've done is by adding salt, you're removing moisture from the muscles. Obviously, fat has no water, so you're just removing water. And what you're doing is you're bringing the water activity, which is a measure of the number of water molecules available, to a level below which any life is sustainable. So no bacteria can actually grow because the water activity is that low. Now, within a whole piece of meat, the middle of that meat has got something called muscular sterility. Bacteria can't get into it. It's only on the outside. So the salt will also act as an inhospitable kind of barrier. When you're making salami, however, you're mincing that, and it's all like a sausage effectively. You're moving it in. That bacteria from the outside is then going within the mix, and that's where we need to come on to fermentation, but that's for another
That's episode 2, isn't it?
But the process is not dissimilar. You're in essence you're curing it, so you're adding enough salt to remove as much moisture, but with the salmon the water activity level is not low enough to be able to be ambient stable. You could make it, but it wouldn't be a very pleasant.
How long do you smoke it for?
3 blocks of 8 hours, so you get 8 hours during the day. It goes into the fridge, comes out. So we do that, repeat that process over 3 days.
And the fact that you're taking it out of the fridge and putting it back, does it not create any kind of risk in terms of bacteria growth? Or once they've been salted, you've just removed the bacteria
because
and
at this
you can do
point,
whatever you want?
exactly. At this point, you've got this salted exterior, so it's still. I mean, we're cold smoking, so there's as you guys are. So there is still. It's not. You're not putting it into like a warm room, but because the salt creates that barrier and prevents any kind of bacteria.
Interesting.
So any good quality charcuterie shouldn't go in the fridge.
A lot of charcuterie does need to go in the fridge, but that's all down to how quickly. And it goes back to our point earlier about speeding things up. We could get that to the market a lot quicker by removing less moisture, but then it would have to be in the fridge. So if it says it needs to be in the fridge, it's generally a factor of time. It's because somebody has wanted that product out quicker. Now, if I could cut the time by 20%, it means I can get 20% more out. So if it's a pure economic decision, you go, well, actually, let's age it for less and get more cycles turned out. But the quality suffers and it becomes a very different product.
Yeah, it's always quantity versus quality.
Always. Yeah. That's always the question, right? And it depends. You've got people who do it because they genuinely love the product, and you've got people who want to say, how much money can I make irrespective of the effect that will have? And sometimes I wish I could think that way, but I can't.
No, well, we're very grateful to you that you don't, all of you guys. So unbelievably, we're out of time, but thank you so much for coming in. I could listen to this and continue to munch this forever. A big thank you to fellow presenter and expert Dhruv Baker and our fabulous guests Vincenzo Gentile and Jacopo Fincato from Smokin Brothers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Food Rebels is available from radio stations around the UK, and further afield you can get replays on the podcasting apps such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you taste the rebellion.